Hello, everyone. My reasons for taking this course are that I'm interested in the future status of the world's oceanic plankton. Scientific studies have shown, particularly recent studies, that the volume of plankton in the oceans has been declining at an average annual rate of 1% a year, and that this rate is increasing every year. Thus far, based on the most recent and comprehensive scientific evidence, we have lost an approximate 40% of our total global plankton levels since the year 1950. This is troubling because if we take that information and the fact that we are losing an average of 1% of our plankton per year, we should potentially run out of plankton if the trend continues before the end of this current century. So individuals like myself will probably not be around any longer, but the next generation and certainly the one after them will have to deal with a world devoid of plankton. So then the question becomes, what does that mean? Why is it happening, and how can this be prevented? Well, just for a quick review, plankton, of course, are microscopic organisms that live on the surface of the ocean water. They're divided into two groups: phytoplankton, which are photosynthetic um, microscopic plants, and zooplankton, which are microscopic animals such as crustaceans, the kind that form the coral reefs. This is significant. They're very significant to all life on Earth because they form the largest segment of biomass in the oceans by far. They also compose roughly half of the Earth's total photosynthetic biomass. They trap carbon dioxide and emit oxygen through photosynthesis. And if it were not for them, half of the world's oxygen would not be being produced. Furthermore, half of the carbon dioxide that's being trapped via the photosynthetic processes would not be getting trapped, so therefore it would exacerbate global warming even worse than it already is. And then finally, plankton form the base of the food web for virtually all maritime life, and as a consequence for a good amount of terrestrial life as well. So without them, an argument could be made to say that there might not really be any oceanic life after their decline, and there's a significant amount of speculation as to what exactly the status of terrestrial life would be without oceanic plankton. Certainly, all life forms that derive their life energy at some point in their food web from aquatic life would also be endangered. And then, of course, even those creatures that don't rely on food from the oceans, it's not entirely certain what our state of existence would be without them, given the fact that they do encompass half of the world's photosynthetic biomass, which means that oxygen levels would be severely depleted across the globe. History does give us an idea. There was one time in global history that we know that the plankton did actually go extinct, and this occurred 250 million years ago during what was known as the Permian mass extinction, which was the most significant period of mass extinction in global history. It resulted in the final extinction of Paleozoic life, mostly including large insects and amphibians. Almost all the life in the waters died at that time, 95% of it, we believe, and 50% of the world's terrestrial species died as well. An argument can be made to say that we'd be a little more resilient given the fact that mammals tend to be less reliant on the oceans than large insects or amphibians. But the question is, do we really want to take that risk or find out what exactly that means? So, why is this happening? There are different theories. The prevailing theory is that it's because of global warming. Um, a warmer global climate is resulting in a warmer oceanic surface layer, which is creating what's known as a thermocline, which prevents the two layers of the oceanic water, the deep nutrient-rich waters below the surface and the typically nutrient-starved top layer. Now, the plankton have to live in the top layer, which is because they need the sunlight. They have to rely on sunlight to survive. But they, because that top layer can't mix with the lower layer because of the thermocline, which causes difference in density between the two layers and prevents them from mixing, they aren't able to get nutrients from below the top layer of the ocean water. Um, and this prevents the plankton from reproducing. For a more in-depth explanation of this, you can reference any earth science book um, to understand what I'm talking about. But the point of the fact is the least amount of plankton activity occurs counterintuitively in the tropical areas because this is where there is a year-long um, warm layer on the ocean, which means that the two layers are never able to mix. Um, Temperate areas don't have that top layer all year round. During the winter months, it actually just mixes with the lower layer, and then therefore the top layer is able to replenish itself, which means that it'll have nutrients for the springtime. But with a rising climate across the globe, these tropical regions in the oceans are growing larger and larger, which is pushing plankton levels further and further away from the equator. A 2010 study has found that plankton levels have declined in almost all of the world's oceans, even in the Arctic, which was surprising and even somewhat confusing to the scientists involved. The only ocean that actually experienced plankton growth was the Indian Ocean, for reasons that are not fully explained either. So then the question becomes how to prevent this. Um, the obvious answer is that if indeed this is because of global warming, we would have to find a solution to reduce global carbon emissions, which would then slow down and eventually halt and then reverse the greenhouse effect, which is causing global climate change. Whether that'll happen politically is probably unlikely, in my opinion. Um, and if it's not because of global warming, that's even worse because then we don't know what's causing the decline. Um, it could happen without human activity. It did happen 250 million years ago for reasons that we're still trying to speculate. That would be very bad because then we couldn't do anything. If it is actually because of human activity, we'd at least have the option of trying to change our behavior in a way that would cause the plankton to start rebounding. Um, so my prediction then is that I don't think that the humankind will take the necessary precautions to reverse global warming and to save the plankton. And then that means that we have to figure out how exactly we're going to survive in a post-plankton world and what exactly the implications of that would be. So I'm hoping to glean some information about all of these questions in this course. That's why I'm taking the course. And I encourage anyone who has questions or comments about this very important topic to email me or message me in the forums or in the class. Thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you all in the future.